The Republican-led Senate now looks poised to pass the worst bill in modern American history, and don't scroll, because this is probably the beginning of the rest of your life.
Beyond the headlines, Trump's newest bill is more than a power move. It marks a turning point for America. For millions, it redraws the lines of healthcare, immigration, and civil rights, and not in a positive way. On paper, it pledges strength. In reality, it will centralize power, diminish protections, and deepen the gap between government and its citizens. If passed, history may look back on this as the beginning of the end for America, a single pen stroke deciding the nation's fate. Let's listen further. I'll give you my thoughts at the end of the video.
I mean, this bill is so bad that 2 Republicans are already retiring over it. I mean, Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill Act, it's gonna add more debt to America than any bill in history. It also looks like it's gonna take away healthcare from at least 17 million people by cutting Medicaid while bankrupting rural hospitals. If you're middle class, it looks like it's gonna raise your healthcare premiums by $26,000 a year. It increases the likelihood of power outages nationwide while raising your power bill massively. It'll make ICE, who many say are acting like a secret police, into the largest law enforcement branch in America while eliminating food assistance for the poor. It'll take the Pell Grant away from millions. They're eliminating student loans for grad school while prohibiting states from regulating AI. And it also cuts funding to NASA in such a way that makes it possible that China will set up a moon base before we do. And so there's this big question of like, who is this bill even for? The public hates it, industry and businesses seem to hate it, investors hate it, libs hate it, most of MAGA hates it, Elon hates it. Right? I mean, do you remember earlier this year when you had Doge, right? That was a thing, and the big singular focus was paying down our debt, and they said that the fate of our whole civilization, it depended on it. In fact, so much so that we just had to get rid of life-saving cancer research and halt breakthrough cures on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Well, now it appears that they're just even ignoring that, and we're adding trillions to the debt and exploding the deficit. And with that, you have many noting, at least with China and Europe, they have debt because they're actually helping their people, but we're taking on more debt so we can just permanently fuck ourselves and our future. But hey, for now, follow to stay in the loop.
We're here at our nation's capital. I've been on the floor for the last 9 or so hours dealing with amendments to what, in my view, is the most dangerous and destructive piece of legislation in the modern history of America, and that is Trump's big, beautiful bill, which is beyond words a disaster. What this bill will do is give massive tax breaks to billionaires, close to $1 trillion, and then at the same time make horrific cuts to Medicaid, to nutrition, to education. So in many sense, this is a massive transfer of wealth from low-income and working people to the people on top. If you can believe it, hear this. What this bill does is throw 16 million Americans off of the health care that they currently have because of the cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. There are studies out there which suggest, this is just almost unspeakable, that some 50,000 Americans will die every year unnecessarily because of the health care that they lose. On top of that, massive cuts to nursing homes and to community health centers that are dependent on Medicaid funding. So this is really what Trumpism is all about. If you're rich and if you're powerful and if you make big campaign contributions, you're going to get a very large tax break. But if you're a working person and you're low income, you can't afford, multi-million-dollar campaign contributions, what's going to happen to you is you're going to lose your health care, your kid's not going to be able to get an education, and there will be hungry children in this country who will not get the food they need. So this is truly an obscene and disgusting piece of legislation. So we've been on the floor now for 9 hours. There are 2 Republicans out of 53 who have said they're voting no. Will 2 more vote no? That is the question. We don't know the answer to that. I suspect probably not, but who knows? Some of these senators are beginning to hear from the people in their own state. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope we can defeat this horrific piece of legislation. Thanks.
Okay, so the Republicans keep working on this bill and it keeps changing and it keeps getting worse. So the latest, based on what they've done, is that about 17 million people will lose their access to health care. And just so everybody understands about this, who we're talking about your cousin's baby that was born and ran up $1 million in medical debts before the little one even made it home the first time. We're talking about your neighbor who got hit by a bus and ended up in a wheelchair and needs a home health aide to be able to live in his home. And we're talking about your friend's grandma who outlived her savings and now counts on Medicaid to pay for her nursing home. So those are the folks we're talking about. And those are the folks who, under this Republican bill, are going to lose their health care. And then just one more twist. Right now, on the version that we've seen, it's about $1.1 trillion pulled out of the healthcare system. So you know who else gets hurt? Is everybody. Yeah. When all those 17 million people lose their healthcare coverage, here's the bad news. They still get sick. They still end up in the emergency room. They still get into accidents. They still need help. So they show up at the hospital, and God bless them, the hospitals do their best. But if they're not covered by Medicaid, that's 17 million people for whom it's just what's called uncompensated care, which means the hospital has to eat it. But the hospital not getting that money in, that means the best estimate is we're going to lose about 300 hospitals across this country. It's going to be a lot of rural hospitals. It's going to be hospitals scattered throughout America. So that means even if you don't have Medicaid, even if you don't care about anybody who has Medicaid, next time someone you love starts to have a heart attack, next time someone you love falls at the playground and needs a whole bunch of stitches, and the hospital nearby, your community hospital that you would have gone to, once it has closed, it's closed for everybody. It's not just closed for the people on Medicaid, it's closed for everyone. So the Republicans are saying, we're going to take a healthcare system that already just barely makes it day to day. We're going to take it, we're going to rip $1.1 trillion out, we're going to take away care from all those folks, and all so they can give ginormous tax breaks to a handful of billionaires and billionaire corporations. Yeah. That's the deal.
You also stated that this bill would lead to higher costs for people with private insurance.
Yep.
I didn't know that. That's shocking to me. So how is that?
People are still going to have heart attacks. They're still going to have strokes. They're still going to have car accidents. So that means we're going to have a bunch of people still using our hospitals, but who have no insurance. So if you're a hospital, suddenly your ER is full of people who aren't going to reimburse you. You're not going to get any money back. You're just going to pay for people who are having a heart attack and all that care. And so the hospitals are going to say to themselves, oh, shoot, I no longer can afford to keep my ER open unless I charge more to everybody else who does have insurance. So they're going to start charging more to the patients who have, let's say, Blue Cross or other private insurance. Then the insurance companies are going to say, holy moly, the hospitals are now charging us more. That means I need to rely on more from the patients themselves to pay, in their copays. The head of one of our big private insurance companies in Michigan told me that based on the numbers in this bill, she's thinking that the price of health insurance for her private customers, for private insurance customers, will have to go up by like 10 to 13% this January. Okay, so imagine your healthcare bill. Yeah. Imagine like how much you pay in a copay and suddenly 13% more. Is there a single human in America who thinks they're paying too little for their health insurance?
If I could give you an example, right? So I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I just had knee surgery like 10 days ago.
Yep.
My copay is already expensive. It was $5,000. I can't imagine a 13% increase.
That's exactly what it is. And, we saw throughout the country, like how much anger there is about healthcare right now. Like we're broken as a country on how we provide healthcare to our people, most powerful country in the world, right? Everyone deserves access to care. And so to me, this is like these Republicans who are about to vote yes on this bill are just not reading the room. They're not reading the anger and the frustration and how exhausted people are paying so much of their monthly income to healthcare. So I think it's a huge mistake. And not only are people not going to be insured, but even people who don't think of themselves like, I know there's people at home in Michigan who are like, I'm not on Medicaid. That's not my problem. I'm like, no, it's going to be your problem when you pay 13% more for your health insurance.
You probably don't know this, but the most important person in the Senate isn't actually a senator. It's the Senate parliamentarian, and she's been busy slashing huge parts of Trump's big, beautiful bill because they violate the Senate rules. So much so that some Republicans even want to fire her for it. Let me explain. This is Elizabeth McDonough. It's her job to be the Senate's referee, aka the expert and interpreter of the Senate rules. It is an unelected and nonpartisan role. Remember that. It'll be important later. McDonough is the 6th parliamentarian and the first woman to hold the role. During budget reconciliation, the process going on right now to pass Trump's spending bill, it's her job to make sure that every single provision in the bill has a direct effect on revenue, spending, or the budget. If it doesn't, she cuts it. A few of the main things she's cut from the bill are limiting lawsuits against the federal government by requiring large bonds, barring SNAP benefits for non-citizens or permanent residents, repealing green energy programs, prohibiting federal money under Obamacare from going to health insurance plans that cover abortion services, and freezing the Medicaid provider tax, which states use to pay for their share of Medicaid payments. But there are so many more. The whole list is on the screen, so you can pause to read if you want. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, Republicans can call for a vote to overrule her, but it's really, really rare. And Senate Majority Leader John Thune could even fire her if he wants to. But remember what I said earlier about it being a nonpartisan role? There's a whole line of succession in the parliamentarian's office to protect the job from political influence. So it's not like Thune could go pick somebody who agrees with him on everything and install them as the parliamentarian. And that's how one unelected rule keeper can change the entire course of Trump's spending bill.
This bill centralizes federal authority in ways the Constitution deliberately tried to avoid. From immigration enforcement to healthcare oversight and civil liberties, the federal government is poised to take a far more active role in regulating the daily lives of citizens. The argument, of course, is that this is about efficiency and security. But history has shown that such language often masks deeper intentions: the consolidation of control under the guise of national interest. The American people, particularly the working class, immigrants, and marginalized communities, are likely to feel the impact first. Under stricter immigration controls and tightened surveillance provisions, civil liberties could be eroded quietly. Healthcare policies reshaped by the bill may look cost-effective on paper, but could create wider gaps in access, especially for low-income families and vulnerable populations. What once was a safety net could become a privilege. Perhaps most dangerous is the bill's quiet undermining of checks and balances. It grants sweeping powers to the executive branch and sidelines judicial and congressional oversight in key areas. That's not just policy. That's a structural change to American governance. It shifts power from the people's representatives to the individual in the Oval Office. That kind of authority isn't easily undone once normalized. If passed in full, this bill could usher in a future where power is concentrated at the top, dissent is harder to voice, and the average citizen finds it more difficult to engage in the democratic process. Elections would still happen, speeches would still be made, and freedom would still be the word of the day. But the substance behind those ideals may be hollowed out. In the end, this may not look like a collapse. It may look like stability, patriotism, and control. But beneath that facade, it risks being the slow, deliberate dismantling of a system designed to serve the people, not rule over them.